Folks, just to let you know, we are now live, so mind your language until we start. Okay, it's 2 o'clock, so good afternoon, everybody. Oh, we've got an echo. Somebody switch off the speaker. I think it's on a computer.
So you need to mute, just mute your computer.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the Northern Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Julian Dean, Chair of the committee. It's on. I don't know which machine it is then. It's a different machine. Oh, press on. We're not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather at the front of the building. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I also ask you to please ensure that mobile phones are switched off? It's getting psychedelic. Could I ask you to please ensure that mobile phones are switched off and ensure that volume on your laptop is muted. To ensure the members of this committee and all points raised by the public behaviours, sorry, struggling because of this. All points raised by the public speakers are properly heard. I must advise you that I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting. And if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you. That's much better. Members should ensure that they are present throughout the meeting, as you cannot vote on an item if you have not heard all of the debate. Can members and officers introduce themselves each time before they speak so those listening know who is speaking? I shall now ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves, starting with Mark, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Mark Owen. I'm Councillor for Oswestry South East.
Good afternoon. I'm Andy Davis, Councillor for St Oswald.
Rosie Radford, Councillor for Ellesmere Urban.
Adam Pfeiffer, Councillor for Mockmoor Shrewsbury.
Gregory Ebbs, Councillor for Whitchurch South.
Gary Groves, Councillor for Wen and Wen Rural.
Councillor Carl Rowley, Smartons Westbury and Ellesmere Rural.
Brendan Mullen, Councillor for Turn.
Ed Potter, Shropshire Councillor for Load.
Rosemary Dartnell, Councillor for Colham and Sutton and Shrewsbury.
Alison Lloyd, Senior Planning Officer for Shropshire Council.
Kelvin Hall, Principal Planning Officer.
Tabitha Lith, Planning and Development Services Manager.
Kim Brown, Solicitor.
And Emily Marshall, Committee Officer.
Thank you very much. Moving to item 2 to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Northern Planning Committee held on the 16th of September 2025 attached. Do we have any comments on those minutes? Okay, can I see a proposer for those minutes, please? Thank you, Councillor Dartnell. Seconder, Councillor Groves. Thank you. Anybody wish to vote against? No, thank you very much. We've adopted those minutes. Item 3, public question time. We've received no public questions. Item 4, disclosable pecuniary interests. Members are reminded they must declare their disclosable pecuniary interests and other registrable or non-registrable interests in any matter being considered at the meeting as set out in Appendix B of the Members' Code of Conduct and consider if they should leave the room prior to the item being considered. Does anybody wish to declare anything with relation to matters being considered today? No, thank you very much. Which takes us to item 5, the first of our applications, land north of the A53 Longford Market Drayton. So over to officers, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is an outline application for up to 100 dwellings, including affordable housing, structural planting and landscaping, informal public open space and children's play area, surface water flood mitigation, vehicle access point and associated highways improvement works. And the outline application includes access with all of the matters reserved for later approval. Just draw members' attention to the late representations that were circulated yesterday evening. We have an additional public objection, and also there's a summary there of a further objection that we've received yesterday and the officers' response to that, and also the highways officers' comments on any highways related matters that were raised in that late representation. And I'm assuming that members have had the time to go through those and look at those. So in terms of the application, it's situated the site in red to the southwest of Market Drayton. You'll see the location of the site in relation to the A53, and on the next slide you'll see the extent of the application site in red with the surrounding land uses, some dwellings to the north, an equestrian centre to the west, and a mix of commercial and residential development to the southeast. This one shows also the proposed the protected employment area as well to the southwest, which indicates how the development plan intends Market Drayton being developed in the future. The application has been submitted in outline, so it's only seeking permission for the principle of the site being developed for housing and the means of access. However, the application does include indicative plans to show how the site could be developed for up to 100 dwellings, and you'll see that this plan here shows an outline of a layout of the scheme, which includes the means of access to the northeast, some green space, open space, drainage infrastructure. As I say, the detailed designs of the development would be dealt with at reserved matters stage if outline permissions granted. This one is another indicative plan that shows some of the areas of development of the proposal, including the indicative location of play space, the drainage infrastructure, which would include a detention basin, and areas of landscaping and biodiversity enhancements, all to be provided within the red line of the site. This one shows some of the highways improvements that have been put forward as part of the proposal. This includes the widening of the Longford Turning public highway, which is to the north of the site, to 5.5 metres, a separate 3 metres wide shared footway and cycleway within the site adjacent to the highway, and a footway also to be provided from the underpass under the A53 towards Market Drayton. This one's a bit more detail showing the proposed footpath and cycle improvements within the site to benefit any future occupants and also other users, including the residents of the properties to the north. This one shows proposed alterations to the highway underneath the A53 underpass, which would result in a 3.7 metres wide highway with a 2 metres wide footway and a one-way system being implemented. And this shows the location of a cycle path link on the Longford roundabout, which is to the southeast of the site, to improve connectivity of cyclists at this point. These are the photographs of the site taken from different locations, showing a relatively flat site, undeveloped greenfield site. You can see the Brookfield properties on the right-hand side of the top photograph and the equestrian centre on the left-hand side of that photograph. And the access will be taken from an existing field access gate, and obviously that will be improved and widened as part of the proposed access arrangements for the development. And this shows the underpass again. As I say, the highway would be altered underneath that to provide a one-way system and a 2 metres wide pedestrian footway. So in terms of the actual planning history, the report, you'll see the application for residential development here has been refused in 2021 and 2023. There's two issues here with the planning history, and you'll note that this third application has been recommended for approval by officers. So in terms of the two main issues, we have a draft allocation, which was being put forward as part of the draft local plan. The draft local plan has now been withdrawn. However, Cabinet in February this year agreed that the fact that the site was proposed to be allocated under the draft local plan is a material consideration to be taken into account as part of future applications. And the second point, of course, is that the council does not have a 5-year supply of housing. The implications of this is explained in the report from paragraph 6.2.10 onwards. The officer recommendation to grant permission is based upon factors such as the previous intention to allocate the land for housing, that the site is considered to be in a sustainable location adjacent to Market Drayton, and that under the advice in the MPPF, any adverse impact of granting permission will be outweighed by the benefits of the proposal. And therefore, the officer recommendation is that outline permission is granted subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement to require affordable housing, open space management, highway improvements, and biodiversity net gain. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before we open it up to members for discussion, we have 3 speakers. So speakers, unfortunately today our clock is not accessible. Apparently it's an online app and it's not working. So officers are going to be keeping a beady eye on their watches. So if you look in this direction, speakers, to look for any signals that you're running out of time. Our first speaker is Councillor Jeff Turner, who wishes to speak against the application. So your 3 minutes begin once you start.
Morton Say Parish Council is objecting to this planning application as it contravenes Shropshire Council's current policies relating to housing in the open countryside. Shropshire's local development framework, adopted core strategy March 2011, states in CS5 Countryside and Greenbelt that new development will be strictly controlled in accordance with national planning policies protecting the countryside and Greenbelt. Shropshire's Site Allocations and Management of Development SAMDEV plan, adopted by Shropshire Council on 17th of December 2015, states in MD7A, Managing Housing Development in the Countryside, that further to core strategy policy CS5 and CS11, new market housing will be strictly controlled outside of Shrewsbury, the market towns, key centres and community hubs and community clusters. Further on in section S11.2 brackets 9 of the SAMDEV, it states that the settlements of Bletchley, Longford, Longslow and Morton Say are a community cluster, providing limited future housing growth of approximately 20 dwellings over the period to 2026, to provide for small-scale development in the parish with limited infilling, conversions and small groups of houses which may be acceptable on suitable sites within the villages of Bletchley, Longford and Longslow. As Shropshire Council does not currently have a 5-year land supply, any planning decisions are more influenced by the government's current policies, so the Council would like to state its additional concerns over the following issues which are of a relevant and material nature in the planning process. Access and highway safety. The access is inadequate for the number of cars going into and out of this proposed development on a small country lane, and the Parish Council has serious concerns for the current residents and those moving into these houses. Traffic generation. The Parish Council would expect an increase of 200 cars in this area from the development and has very serious concerns as to the amount of traffic this will generate. Within the planning application, no consideration has been given to the increase in traffic around the roundabouts in the immediate area, and more worryingly, there is no data in the application relating to traffic coming out of the development and turning left towards Longford along all the narrow lanes. Design and appearance, layout and density. It is not felt that these aspects of the planning application are in keeping with the rural nature of current housing in this parish. Flood risk. The Parish Council has received complaints regarding regular flooding of the River Ducko since the start of the development that is already taking place further up the A53 Market Drayton. There have also been complaints relating to the regular flooding under the A53 bridge immediately adjacent to this proposed development area, and the Parish Council would expect considerable investigation into these issues and a detailed environmental report compiled showing how this flooding would be mitigated. Loss of ecological habitats. As there have been crested newts in the parish, the council are concerned about this loss of habitat and would expect a full ecological survey to be conducted into this issue. Lastly, the parish council would like to highlight their grave concerns regarding the pressure that these additional houses will put on an already very stretched infrastructure system. Considering all these concerns, Morton Say Parish Council is very firmly objecting to this planning application.
Thank you very much. Before you go, Jeff, just any points of clarification from committee members? No. Okay, thank you very much. Come back to Kelvin after all the speakers, if that's okay. Moving on to Councillor Miles Hook. Oh, we have a written statement to be read.
So I'll read that out now for you. It's on behalf of local residents, Morton Say Parish and the wider Priest Division community. I'm asking the Northern Planning Committee to refuse the planning application 25-01926 out for up to 100 dwellings on land north of the A53 Longford, Market Drayton, Shropshire, TF9 3PL. This planning application has previously been presented to Shropshire Council and has been refused on both occasions. Application 21-04307 out was submitted in September 2021 and refused in January 2022 on the basis of the proposal relates to a residential development which lies on land in an area defined as open countryside. It has not been possible to identify any significant additional community or other sustainability benefits to warrant early approval of the site. Secondly, application 23-00089 out was submitted in January 2023 and refused in May 2023 on the basis of the proposal relates to a residential development which lies on land in an area defined as open countryside. It has not been possible to identify any significant additional community or other sustainability benefits to warrant early approval of the site, and insufficient information has been provided in relation to the potential noise implications for future occupiers of the proposed development. Both the above reasons, open countryside and noise considerations for refusal, are still applicable for this latest application. 29 members of the public have commented to date, all objecting to this planning application. Their comments can be summarised as follows. Loss of agricultural land. Loss of valuable agricultural land threatens food security. Impact on rural character. This development will invade our parish and destroy the rural character of the area. Infrastructure strain. Market Drayton cannot cope with more housing. Our schools, doctors and roads are already stretched. Traffic and access issues. The narrow bridge access is dangerous and floods regularly. Privacy and amenity for neighbouring properties will be severely compromised. Flood risk concerns. Flood risk mitigation is inadequate and will not protect existing homes. And procedural fairness. The late submissions of amended documents, including the transport addendum and noise assessment, is unfair and contrary to DMPO 2015 and the MPP guidance. I request a full reconsultation. Parish Council objection. The scale of this development is wholly inappropriate for the location. It will erode the rural character, increase traffic hazards and place unsustainable pressure on local infrastructure. And we've got another list of 1 to 6 points, so I'll go through those. Number 1, conflict with the development plan. The site lies outside the defined development boundary and is designated as open countryside under the adopted local plan. The proposal fails to comply with core strategy policies CS1 and CS5, which seek to focus development within sustainable settlements and protect the countryside. Secondly, harm to rural character and landscape. The scale and form of the development would result in significant adverse impact on the rural character of the area. The proposal would erode the visual separation between Market Drayton and surrounding hamlets, contrary to policy MD7A. 3, inadequate infrastructure capacity. Evidence indicates schools, healthcare facilities and utilities in Market Drayton are already under pressure. No robust mitigation strategy has been provided to address these deficiencies, contrary to policy CS9. 4, highways and access concerns. The proposed access via the narrow bridge on the A53 is substandard and prone to flooding. Increased traffic would exacerbate congestion and safety risks, contrary to policy CS6 and MPPF section 9, promoting sustainable tourism. 5, flood risk and drainage. The site is partially within a flood risk area and submitted mitigation measures are considered inadequate. The proposal fails to demonstrate compliance with policy CS18 and MPPF section 14, meeting the challenge of climate change, flooding and coastal change. 6. Procedural fairness. Late submission of amended documents, the transport addendum and noise assessment without full reconsultation undermines transparency and public participation, contrary to the DMPO 2015 and MPPG guidance. So in summary, the above issues significantly outweigh the benefits of housing delivery and affordable provision. The proposal is contrary to the development plan and national policy, and I ask the Northern Planning Committee to refuse planning application 25-01926 Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And finally, we hear from John Mackenzie, the agent.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of background, this proposal has been subject to 2 historic applications as set out in the report. Both of these were refused, not because there was anything wrong with housing development on the site, but because at that point in time, the council's draft plan allocating the site for housing could only be given limited weight. The planning policy context is now substantially different, and this council has formally resolved that significant weight should be given to the draft plan allocations for decision-making purposes. Pre-application, the proposal before you was subject to detailed discussions with officers on the principle of development and on technical matters, including noise. The written pre-application advice was very positive, and the formal application was made on the strength of this. In terms of principle, this is a logical, well-contained site on the edge of a principal centre where growth should be directed. It's specifically allocated for housing in the draft plan. Whilst the site is outside of the settlement boundary of the adopted plan, this is woefully out of date and needs to flex to significantly accommodate housing needs. Your officers firmly reached the conclusion that the principle of development is acceptable in the context of the development plan and other material considerations. This proposal responds to a significant housing land supply shortfall. The officer report referred to a claimed supply position of 4.73 years, clearly below the minimum 5-year supply required by national policy. It's important to note, however, that the council is relying on this site to deliver housing next year as part of this claimed 4.7-year supply. Any delay in granting planning permission for this scheme will exacerbate the 5-year land supply shortfall further. Turning to planning balance, the NPPF tilted balance is engaged. The balancing exercise is thus tipped firmly in favour of approval. Permission should be granted unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and this is the appropriate development and management test. In this context, all technical issues are addressed. There are no objections from consultees on landscape, ecology, flood risk, heritage, noise or air quality matters. On highways, the access arrangements were designed in close consultation with the local highway authority who support the proposals, and they were subject to appropriate consultation. There are no unacceptable impacts on local infrastructure. This council has still charging schedule in place to ensure that developments fund infrastructure improvements, for example, healthcare and education as required. Overall, there are no unacceptable harms that arise. There are, however, substantial benefits, including additional housing, including affordable housing, helping to address an acute local need, a range of economic benefits, new areas of public open space available for use by the wider community, net biodiversity gains in excess of 10%, thus the biodiversity value of the site post-development is significantly better than the current situation. Any harm is extremely limited, whereas the benefits are substantial. I agree with your officers that the balance is tipped firmly in favour of a grant of permission, and I respectfully urge you to follow the recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for clarification? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go back to Kelvin firstly. Any response to the public speakers?
Not specifically, but I'm happy to answer some questions. Just to clarify that it is recognised in the report that the application is contrary to the development plan. However, the situation with regards to the development plan has materially shifted, significantly shifted, due to the lack of the housing land supply position, such that the MPPF now considers that the housing policies are now out of date, and therefore we have to give a tilted balance effectively and give more weight to sustainability arguments for sites coming forward for housing rather than a strictly development in accordance with the development plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I'll open it up to members. I'm going to kick off with two questions, actually. Just first of all, Kelvin, on your, I think it was your first or second image slide, you showed employment land. Just want to check, is that in the current SANDEV or is that in the draft local plan as withdrawn as on that slide?
Yeah, that's in the that's an allocation in the SANDEV, and that relates to policy MD9, I think, which protects certain areas of land from, or provides additional protections for certain areas of land to retain them in a future employment use.
Okay, so that employment land is effectively allocated even now, whatever happens.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And the second question was just related to the agent's comment about the 4.73 years land supply, assuming that this land is developed. So I wasn't quite clear about that point. Is that correct? Would we end up with a worse figure without this?
A worse figure without this. Our housing land supply figure of 4.73 takes into account the draft allocations as well, and this would be one of them. So this is assumed to be one which would be coming forward.
Thank you for that. Okay, open to members then. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just to continue from that, I just want a bit more clarification because I think I'm slightly ignorant of how this works with the land allocation in the 5-year plan. 4.7 years, which is stuff like 550 houses short. So, yeah, what's the balance? That 4.7 years of what you say draft allocation and what's already been had permission granted. Do you have that sort of number? That'd be big.
Not off the top of my head, no.
Because that will really inform the committee as to how, let's say, urgent the granting of AN number of applications is, and therefore how we consider one application against another. I mean, at one end we could be desperate to grant permission to anything to get to the 5-year point, or it could be that we've got a selection to choose from and we can choose the best overall across the considerations. See what I mean? I personally would need that context to look at this or any other application.
I think your consideration today is strictly whether or not you consider that this site is suitable for residential development, not comparing one to the other. We're not presenting 2 or 3 applications for you to choose. We're asking you simply, is this a suitable site for residential development? And we're giving you the information to help you to make that decision. And they are influenced by factors such as the fact that under the local plan process, it went through an assessment by our planning policy team, and they were satisfied that this was the type of site that would be suitable for residential development. And the intention was that that would be allocated. The situation was that we never got to the point where the planning policies teams assessments were tested at the examination, because the examination never took place and then we withdrew the plan. But the intention was always that, based upon the initial assessment work that was carried out, this was a suitable site for residential development and it should be taken forward as an allocation.
So just to finish up on that, is it the case that we're floating around the 4.7 year point, and as projects mature, they slip out to the bottom end and we need to keep adding more at the top, but we're not quite getting to that point, as opposed to we get to that point and then we're good for 5 years and need to come back to it?
Can I just see if we can unpick your question a bit? Because I think, are you asking about how the figure is affected by applications which have perhaps been granted but not yet built? Is that
it's the overall balance of
okay.
Projects at various stages through plan permission actually being built, so on.
Thank you.
Because I've got it seems to be like a crisis here. I'm sure it isn't, but that's how it comes across every time. Every time I see one of these applications, that's like one of the headlines that, oh, we've got the 5-year plan to get to. So I need to know what that means.
So if an officer could clarify the relationship between planning applications that have been granted and planning applications that have been built, and the 5-year land supply, that would help the council and I think the whole committee. Can
Thank you.
anybody help us on that?
I'll try to. Obviously the government's policy is to significantly boost the supply of housing. The council hasn't got the required amount of housing of the 5 years. Therefore, we have a situation where we are required to grant planning permission for sustainable development to take us above the 5-year level. And once we are above that 5-year level, then we can once again deal with applications in accordance with the development plan under the plan-led system, which is the way that it normally would happen. So by granting planning permission for the draft allocations for windfall sites that are suitable as well, we get closer to that 5 years level above which we can then start to deal with applications as normal, rather than have this tilted balance situation where we have to deal with them speculative applications that come forward where we have to look at strictly whether or not they are sustainable in terms of different factors, rather than ones that our planning policy team are directing our development towards. Does that help?
That was very helpful, thank you.
So just for the benefit of the whole committee, so as applications, as new sites are allocated and planning permission is granted, we get closer to our 5-year land supply. It's not about whether they've been built yet, just to clarify that. For that effect.
Yes, so there's the supply side demanding for something else of what's actually being built, but yeah, on the supply side, so it is there.
Yeah. Okay. Is that clear? Yeah.
Thank you. One thing more thing about committee are likely to be having to make decisions in the coming months on speculative applications which haven't gone through an assessment process by the council at planning policy stage. They are sites that developers think might be considered to be suitable. The difference with this one is that this one has already gone through that initial assessment stage by our planning policy team, and they have decided that it is one which is worthy of allocation, rather than one which a developer has decided is worthy of being put forward. And that's the benefit of this one. It's more in line with the way that it would have worked under the plan-led system, rather than the speculative sites which members will have to deal with coming forwards. And those assessments are taken as material considerations based on the cabinet decision, despite the fact that the local plan was withdrawn. Correct.
Thank you. I think it was Councillor Davis next.
Thank you. I understand exactly what you said there. I can see where you're coming from. But when we are considering individual applications, the fact that there is a housing demand and we need to build more houses shouldn't be a materialistic consideration. That's my first part. So we should be looking at applications per se regarding the wider picture. And the second one is this application, how does it comply with Shropshire Council's policies, particularly CS5 and MD7A, which control the development in the countryside? Does this comply with our current policies? Because we are building an open countryside here at the moment.
We are, and the report does explain this, particularly at 6.2.11. The report does acknowledge that it doesn't comply with CS5 because it is in the countryside, and CS5 requires open market housing is resisted in the countryside. However, because of the tilted balance situation that we have, the MPPF says where the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing, planning policies most important to the decision will be considered out of date. So that applies to CS5. So the MPPF saying CS5 is out of date. You then need to consider it, as it says in 6.2.11, where there are no relevant development plan policies, or the policies which are most important are out of date, you should grant planning permission unless there are particular areas of particular importance, such as assets, that give a good reason for refusing development, such as, I don't know, impact on a listed building or something, or any adverse impacts of doing so will significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So the question for the members today is the harm in granting this proposal today, is that outweighed or not by the benefits of providing additional housing? So if members are able to find what harm there would be, then you're able to refuse it. If you don't think that that harm outweighs the benefits, then you should be permitting it today.
I'm going to move on. Councillor Ebbs. Yeah.
That is what we're calling the tilted balance. We're no longer dealing with things strictly in accordance with CS5. We're dealing with it in terms of giving more weight now to sustainable development. Our view is that this is sustainable. It's next to Market Drayton, got good access. It's good location related to local services, and it's in the location that we were intending to allocate for housing anyway. So on that basis, it's sustainable development, and that's the way that we should now be dealing with applications, because we haven't got a 5-year land supply.
Thank you. Councillor Ebbs.
Thank you. 6.12.4, more just a point of a query. I recognise that drainage have not raised any particular concerns other than the fact that the drains may be blocked. Therefore, Council Highways Maintenance have been alerted. Have we had any updates from Council Maintenance as to the cause of the blockage and things we could potentially do to prevent the blockage from taking place in the future?
Not aware that we've had any update, no, but the same situation applies, that it's a highways maintenance matter that would need to be followed up through that mechanism.
Mr. Groves, and then I'm calling myself.
Thank you, Chair. Calvin, earlier on one of your pictures you put up where it shows the bridge, you just pop that one, please. I may have misunderstood what you said about that, where you're saying it's one way traffic. Just one way. You mean priority? Yeah.
So I misphrased it. Yes, it's not. Yes, it's priority. Yes.
Because we're a bit concerned where it was coming out when that was.
Yeah.
Reading through the report as well, it states about local amenities in the area, that there's local amenities 500 metres away. The local amenities 500 metres away from this development are a Chinese, a chippy and an hairdressers, not really, amenities as such. My concern with this is it's from the edge of Market Drain town centre, it's about 1.5 miles, and depending on where you go in the town, it can be up to 2 miles away. So that's a fair out track for people if they want to get from this development into town, especially towards Morrison's or Aldi and places like that, the far end of town. My question is, there is a circular bus in Market Drain, but doesn't go this far up. It goes 500 metres down the road where the said amenities are, and then turns right back into Market Drain. Is there any way that if this development was to be approved, that there could be something put on either SIL or a 106 to put some funding into the circular bus route to either come up as far as the roundabouts at Longford Turning, or even to what is known as the Muller roundabout, so it would actually benefit people who work at Muller's as well to use the circular bus route and then come back round. So is there any way that could be looked at within this development, either through SIL or through a 106?
In theory, yes, if members thought that was the only way that it was going to be an acceptable development, if passenger transport was improved, then in theory that could form part of a contribution under a 106, but that isn't how the application has been considered so far. If there's additional demand for example, in the area because of the additional houses, then that might make an extension to the bus service more profitable in any event, without any specific funding being provided by the developer.
Thank you. A couple of points from me. So the way I've read it is that we've got a site which has gone through a sustainability assessment in order to appear in the withdrawn draft local plan, and that gives it enormous amounts of weight in terms of outline planning permission. This is only outline. That assessment has already been made, that this has been determined as a sustainable development site, and that it's we would have to show perhaps that sustainable assessment is off balance, is off kilter to reject this. That's where my head is with this. So the two questions I have with regard to that are around flooding and around noise, because there were two comments that came in, one from the RAF, which suggested levels of noise which seemed to me were pretty difficult to mitigate, and I wasn't quite clear what mitigation was possible in terms of the helicopter training aspect of that area. And the second was to do with the point you made under 6.12.4 around drainage and flooding, and whether or not there has been a sort of a revisiting of the issue, given that we know that actually these events are getting more severe and more frequent, and the original sustainability assessment for this site would have been back in 2018, 2017, 2016, when these sites were first assessed for the local plan. So those two questions really. Have we, how confident can we be that the assessment made around flooding at that time still stands, and have we adequately addressed the noise issues to do with the RAF site?
I actually come in the RAF side, been ex-RAF helicopter pilot at Shrewsbury. I think that entry's been a bit misconstrued. They talk about fast jets and things. Those fast jets can use Shrewsbury as a relief landing ground, not Turnhill. Also, since I was there, they've changed the aircraft types they're using, the same Eurocopter types that the air ambulance and police units use. They're very quiet, and you're not right next door to Turnhill. I don't really see it myself from my SME
that local knowledge is helpful. Thank you. Yeah. Kevin, anything on the flooding issue?
Well, just on the noise issue, just generally, the Ministry of Defence haven't objected at all. They've recognised that there might be disturbance, but they've suggested that matter can be dealt with through planning condition, as have our regulatory services team as well. Obviously, it's only an outline planning application as well, and we don't know the final designs and layout of the houses, and there's a lot of design matters that can be dealt with in terms of how the houses are constructed, which could mitigate against adverse levels of noise. In relation to the drainage as well, the flood risk assessment was submitted as part of the planning application, and that looked into in principle, the whether or not the site could be developed satisfactorily to avoid adverse flooding and the like. They put forward a strategy which includes ensuring that it recognises that parts of the site do pond, and it's put forward a strategy for improving that and making sure that the drainage is improved by restricting any runoff to greenfield rates through the construction of a attenuation pond as well, which will ultimately then outfall into the local drainage courses, drainage water courses. So there has been updated drainage work done, and coupled with that, the proposed condition which requires that a drainage scheme is developed in conjunction with the detailed designs would ensure that those matters are satisfactorily dealt with.
Thank you. So effectively the issues have been revisited since the original assessment. Okay, yes. Thank you. Councillor Dartnell?
Yeah, while we've heard the objections and read the objections that are on the report, I can see from what Kelvin's telling us and others have told us that really there isn't any reason to not accept the proposal. I can't see anything that we can object to in a meaningful way. So I wanted to, if it's allowable to do this, to propose that we approve the application, but with a condition to negotiate, if this is allowable, as Councillor Groves has suggested, a contribution from the developer towards provision of the circular bus to the residents that eventually live there. I think it's really important that we don't approve car dependent, continue to keep approving car dependent sites for new housing outside towns, on the edge of towns. I think it's a really important aspect. Is that allowable to do that?
I suggest that is about sustainable local public transport rather than that specific route. Who knows what will happen between now and the build out?
Yeah, some sort of public transport. Yes, you're right.
Councillor, I think I saw Councillor Davis, then Councillor Mallon. We will. Your proposal is now on the table, so we will move to a vote on that at some stage. But I'll just take a couple more comments first.
Yeah, you might have covered this. Concerns have been raised about the impact of more vehicles coming through a small bridge. Over 200 vehicles could be travelling along that road. Has a comprehensive traffic survey been carried out to look at the impact on the roundabouts, on the road system, with the bridge, with increasing traffic?
I'm going to call on some help here. We've got our highways officer
very person.
To help me out with that one, Chris Mead.
So it's trying to understand, the implications of all these different, 100 houses. You could have 2-3 vehicles for it, and it was a very small lane accessing the site. So what's going to be the real implications for people who are living in the area regarding traffic?
Thank you, Councillor. Just to introduce myself, my name's Christopher Mead. I'm the Senior Developing Highways Manager. Just want to touch on the Section 106 point first, which is absolutely, if you feel that engaging the bus service and bringing it within 400 metres of new development or as close to that as possible is an outcome that you would support, then fully supportive of that being included as a proposal. To the main road itself, to the access point and to the underpass, we've done a significant amount of work with this applicant. They've surveyed that road, they've taken the volumes of traffic, the different classifications of traffic, that includes horse riders, bicycles, agricultural movements and cars which relate to the residential amenity. We know the measured speeds of those vehicles, and we know that they result in less than 1,000 movements per day along that entire section leading up to the access point. The additionality of the proposed development will still result in less than 1,000 movements per day. Now, I know that there's always a little bit of criticism of highways authorities when we say that 100 houses doesn't generate as much traffic as people may perceive, but the general outcome will be about 450 movements per day. And that's a mixture of all types of traffic. So the people who are walking, the people who are cycling, and the car movement that they will be using. There's no question about that. When we add that onto the existing traffic on this lane, the overall number of movements is still less than 1,000 per day, which puts it into a category of being a quiet lane. So as a rural facility, and I think you saw on one of the plans, which was the signs to basically just reinforce that message to the locality, which is this is still retaining its character as a quiet lane and will still be for that purpose. Just to answer questions that haven't been asked, but perhaps will be if I don't touch on them now. In terms of the underpass and its relationship with movement, typically to introduce a priority working system that you might think of with a giveaway line and some signage and a bit of traffic calming, we wouldn't introduce a measure of that nature until there were 3,000 to 4,000 movements per day. So there isn't a level of movement there which is begging for the introduction of extra infrastructure, which would be a burden on this authority if we were to introduce it when it was otherwise not necessary. We are satisfied that for less than 1,000 movements per day, the local residents who are living there in the future, who will make up half of that traffic, will be able to make use of it in a flexible and acceptable manner.
Thank you. I'm going to, yes, go on. Actually, no, Councillor Mullen was first and then.
Thank you. Two concerns. First off, noise. Was this previously sent back for noise assessment? And if so, what's changed about the realities of that? Why are we not happy that noise from the A53 versus the new houses will be mitigated? And the second one is, I mean, if you can bring up the overhead map, please, showing the whole of the town and the A53. This will be the only extension of Market Drayton north of the A53 into open countryside. So obviously the issue of using open countryside and agricultural land in itself is concern to some, and has been brought up here in the objections. But that's the purpose of that type of land north of the A53 being utilised this way. What stops it becoming a smear of creeping urbanisation all along that corridor to the north of the A53, potentially even joining Longford Village? You know, what are we changing the game for somebody wanting to apply for one of those fields in the future because there's been a previous consent? So I do have that concern also.
Just in terms of creeping in terms of road use, I want to be clear that that reinforcement of it's retaining its character as a quiet lane, it's less than 1,000 movements, but it's close to that threshold now. So that road, the one which will have 100 dwellings on it, is pretty much at its limit now, and we've protected its status as a quiet lane. And we've also, within the discussions, created the opportunity for the applicant to promote locally, formalising that quiet lane and actually making it a recorded asset so that the locals can call it that and protect its status with low levels of movement. So those are things which we've discussed and that the applicant's committed to, which I think are very much positives. In terms of creeping, in terms of roads generally, I think what's important to note in terms of this application is it's fully reliant on the existing infrastructure as it sits, and it isn't trying to increase the capacity of roundabouts. It's not trying to increase the capacity of existing roads. We are looking to embed walking and cycling infrastructure to enhance the offer and to encourage those movements, but those are supplanted on top of the existing level of movements which are achieved by the road system. If this was a development where you were seeing large-scale highway infrastructure improvements that could lead to more cars coming in, I would take your concerns and I would probably parallel run with them on that premise. But in this instance, I would say that it's a very protected application and that it doesn't ask Market Drayton to do any more, and certainly doesn't add any infrastructure that could encourage somebody else to think that an opportunity for development exists on those roads in particular.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Kelvin to come in as well, because I think the question was more general about development than just the roads. But then I'm going to take just Councillor Groves and then come back to Rosemary Dartnell, and then I'm going to move this towards some decisions.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of noise, the 2023 application, one of the reasons for refusal was that insufficient information had been provided in relation to the potential noise implications for future occupiers of the proposed development. That was because there wasn't enough information for us to be satisfied that the site could be designed to protect residents from noise. Further information has been submitted as part of this current planning application with a noise assessment to indicate that mitigation can be designed into the scheme. As I said earlier, it's an outline application. We don't know, we have an indicative plan as to how the houses will be arranged, but we don't know for sure how they will be in terms of, you know, which parts of the site that will be facing where, which you know, mitigation can be provided in terms of acoustic barriers or aligning and orientating houses away from the road, for example. What we do know is that the noise assessment indicates that mitigation can be provided in a satisfactory way, which it hadn't been demonstrated in the previous application.
And if permission is granted, will that be enforceable after the houses are built?
As part of the reserved matters application, we'll be expecting further noise information to be submitted to show that the way that the applicants have designed the site is suitable for the particular noise climate in the area.
What I'm saying is, if they go ahead and build it, put the mitigation in, and mitigation is inadequate, can we enforce an upgrade to that so it is then compliant?
Well, we don't know yet what that condition would say. The condition might say, you know, further mitigation. You might need to do post-construction noise monitoring to ensure that the mitigation is suitable. But we haven't got a condition at the moment, so we don't know. It is possible that a condition could be framed in that way.
Okay, thank you.
And secondly, in terms of the creeping aspect, you know, towns grow, and you look at the particular constraints of Market Drayton, and the main one is the River Tern to the southeast, in terms of, you know, how much development can expand in that direction. So you know, one would argue that it might be inevitable that, you know, further development might come forward, you know, to the western side of the A53, particularly as well as we have the protected employment land as well, just to this southwest there of the. So the expectation is that there will be development in the future to that side of the A53. Again, there are constraints there. There's another brook, for example, to the north of the site, but the question today is this particular application sustainable, rather than does it open the door to future applications being put forward in the future?
Thank you. Okay, one more comment before we move towards the vote. But officers want to comment on section 106, then I'll come back to Rosemary, and then we'll try and move to a decision. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to support Councillor Dartnell's proposition by seconding it, so long as we can have the 106 for public transport, and as the officers have said, that lane is then designated as a quiet lane, and I'm happy to second that.
Thank you for that. Shall I come back to you now?
Just regarding the section 106 contribution, just to be clear, whatever we ask for would only be time limited, because we couldn't ask for this in perpetuity, and we'll have to make sure it meets the, we'll have to go away and do some work on making sure what it does meets the tests of a section 106 requirement. But I think in principle there is something there that we could work on with the applicant, but I just want to set that expectation that it wouldn't be the money for the bus would be in perpetuity. It would be for a time limited period.
So Dartnell?
My question's already been answered. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a proposer, we have a seconder. Just to remind people, this is an outline application for 100 dwellings, including affordable housing, structural planting and landscaping, informal public open space and children's play area, surface water flood mitigation, vehicle access and associated highways improvements. So it's not a full application. We don't see the design issues. We don't see the noise mitigation issues. It's just the principle of development on this site. So we have a proposal, we have a seconder. So do we do a roll call now for every vote, don't we? So yeah.
Abstain.
Four.
Yeah, we gave that. Good discussion. If there's anybody who wishes to leave, if we can do that sort of swiftly, because it's quite a noisy floor, and just give us a chance to have a breather before we move on. Pages. Okay, thank you, committee members. So to move on to the next item, which is proposed conversion of upper floors into 6-bedroom, 6-person house multiple occupation in Oswestry. If I can hand over to the officers, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's correct. This next application relates to 23 Cross Street in Oswestry and to the conversion of the upper 3 floors to shared living accommodation. The site consists of a 4-storey terrace building in the town centre. It's important to note that it's a non-designated heritage asset. It's within the conservation area and it's also in the town's designated centre. Due to the change in ownership, the upper floors are no longer in association with the ground floors. Therefore, the access to the building, it's an existing access to the rear, and that will continue to support the upper floors. So the location plan here shows the site in context with its built-up surroundings. Like you'll see that the site boundaries are closely run alongside the building, and it also includes a shared area to the rear to where the building will be accessed. This is a bit clearer. So you access the site via the alleyway, round the back, via an external staircase. This is the existing principal elevation, and you'll see from the proposed, very minimal changes are proposed. Existing windows are to be restored and repaired. No objection from the conservation officer with this regard, subject to conditions of the materials being sympathetic to the existing designated asset and the conservation area. Existing doors and roof lights to be retained. No further additions are proposed as part of the conversion scheme. The next slide shows the floor plans. Again, these are the existing 3 floors. So there's a slight internal remodelling to accommodate the shared living areas. We've got 6 bedrooms across the 3 floors. We've got a shared living room, shared kitchen, 2 bathrooms and a WC, and a dedicated laundry room. There's also a bike store area to the rear of the downstairs toilet under the stairwell. It's important to note that the internal living arrangements meet and most of the bedrooms exceed national living standards in terms of sleeping space. And as stated in the description of development, this is a 6-person, 6-bedroom level of accommodation, which is important in terms of the scale of the development and the footfall intensity of it in this town centre location. This last slide gives a bit more of an indication of the rear access to the property. Like I say, it is existing. The staircase is already in place and serves a purpose of access to the upper floors. Here's the rear, just to the rear of the staircase. This is where the bins will go. You can see from the images that neighbouring properties also have a bin store, use this area as a bin store. I think this demonstrates that bins can be taken into the area and out sufficiently on bin collection days. So I think that's the site in context of its surroundings and the layout and its access. Just a brief outline of the development and the benefits it will provide. Obviously, it will provide low-cost housing options in a town centre location which deemed sustainable. It's got good transport links. It's got available parking within the town centre and public amenity spaces. Waste management strategy has been put forward and is sufficient in serving the 6 residents that potentially will occupy this building. So the internal living arrangements are satisfactory in terms of their scale and the space provided for occupants. It will also bring the upper floors, which are currently vacant in use of this non-designated asset, back into use, securing the future use of the non-designated asset in the conservation area rather than being left redundant and empty. I think it's worth pointing on some of the concerns raised at this point, and that's specifically it's the limitations of the access. Obviously, it won't be suitable for all. However, it is suitable for most and will remain to provide an access into the building. Another concern that's been raised by the Town Council was the lack of outside amenity. You'll see from the site plan that there is no space to be provided in this instance, again, due to its town centre location, terraced setting. However, there are public parks and spaces available, and again, due to its town centre location, it's well floodlit, should occupants want to go for walks early mornings, late evenings. It's quite a social environment in terms of the accommodation itself, in that they're sharing communal spaces within the accommodation, and obviously there's bars, restaurants, and social environment surrounding. So yeah, the concerns related to amenity, parking. Waste management was a previous concern, but the information has been provided and officers are satisfied with that provision. There's nothing before us to suggest that the bins located in this area will cause any fire risk or harm. And like I said previously, this is an area utilised by neighbouring properties for their bins also. And you'll see from the pictures, there is space to manoeuvre in and around for pedestrians and for the bins to be taken out the alleyway. Overall, officers feel that this small stock, low cost affordable housing in a highly sustainable location provides great benefits which outweigh the limitations noted. And overall is policy compliant and therefore is recommended for approval, subject to conditions which will control the number of occupants in the building. I think that covers all planning matters. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We have 3 speakers. The first speaker is a speaker against, Roger Blake. You have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. If you press the right-hand button, the little red light should come on.
Okay. I own a building and run a business from the adjoining building, the one that's up for development, and have done for 31 years. I think that the waste management plan really isn't right. The current plan is to use star passageways. You show the photos and you say that other people use it to put their bins in. Those are 2 businesses. They're not residential properties, they're businesses. And any increase to include residential waste is a clear over-intensification and will set a precedent for the other residential properties to use that area. That's at least 9 further properties who could, as residents, start to use that alleyway as their bin storage. Oswestry High Street Heritage Action Zone secured £180,000 funding from Historic England to transform that passageway with Cloud D. And at the time, done to regenerate the alleyways in Oswestry Town Centre. Don't think they ever perceived they would be filled with bins. The planning's proposals, waste management does not align with the funding and the good work carried out by Oswestry High Street's Heritage Action Zone. Also, the passageway is narrow. It's a pedestrian hygienic conditions, attracting vermin, etc. The access is also a bone of contention, that the escape route is over a flat roof which we own, and in fact the access is the flat roof that we own, and whilst we have a right to provide the access, we don't have an obligation to make that a fireproof access or exit. In 40 years that I've known the building, it has never been used as an access point, only ever as an emergency exit point. It is also on the lower floor through that door into the alleyway. It is the fire exit for Liberty Travel, and the bins will be right next to that fire exit. I have huge concerns about the safety based on our fire exits, and we lose control over that door from the alleyway. Already the contractors who've started work on the property have damaged the door, resulting in me having to pay for a new fire door already £768. I've tried to discuss this with the applicant by email, but these emails have remained unanswered. So I fear that the development, if it did take place, would compromise the safety of staff at Liberty Travel, and I would seriously consider moving the business out of Oswestry. I've owned that building, as I said, for 31 years. I love the town. I'd love to see the high street filled with viable commercial and residential units, but I really do not feel that this building is suitable for the proposal of a 6-bedroom HMO.
Thank you very much. Any points of clarification that the committee wishes to ask? Yes.
Councillor Des, thank you very much for that. Can you just clarify the current use of the alleyway? You mentioned for pedestrians. Is there access through the alleyway for pedestrians from one end to the other at the moment?
It is, yes, from Cross Street to Bailey Street. People use it all the time. And yes, there are two businesses, Aroma Cafe and Vision Express, that have their bins there, but they are locally owned businesses. Those bins are never overflowing. They're properly managed. And I think if residents are given the option to put their bins into that alleyway, it could become a problem.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Go on then, one more quick one.
Councillor Ebbs, just following through with the bin inquiry. The next door neighbours, where do they currently put their bins as it stands?
There is nobody in the upper floors, and in the lower floors, I have no idea. It is a vape shop.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Aaron Roberts, Clerk of Oswestry Town Council. So 3 minutes from when you start speaking, and the right hand button, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. I am representing Oswestry Town Council this afternoon, who have objected to the application following this resubmission. For completeness, having held a neutral position on the first application. As Roger has said, this is a key commercial street which has been targeted for regeneration and including the adjoining alleyway, and it has received significant investment. And it is difficult to see how the development can have a positive impact on the immunity of the future residents and neighbouring businesses. I think it is important to acknowledge that officers and members need to deal with the planning application and policy rather than what we experience as residents and our lived experience and the outcome of decisions. Council has to accept that the Waste Management Officer at Shropshire Council is happy with the waste management statement. However, our council remain concerned, and you've heard some additional concerns today, that the proposed approach with waste management remains inadequate and poses a significant fire safety risk to adjacent properties. They will be either next to a fire escape or left in the alleyway, which is a public right of way. Access to the building and the egress from the building has been referenced in the excellent officer's report. I have to say the route is over a flat roof of another building, and there is clearly a need to protect escape routes to ensure that people can get out safely. Apologies, I'm just a humble clerk. I don't know whether this is a condition of planning or a matter for building regs, so that's the reason for making that point, but it is clearly a key issue. Oswestry Town Councils are the owner of the main car parks in the town. We are concerned that they've been cited in multiple planning applications as providing suitable alternative parking. The parking in the town is a community asset. It is not designed for residential parking. They're needed to bring in visitors and shoppers and are an important part of our economy. And this is one of the reasons why the council have asked for a strategic view of development, which is happening at a real piecemeal basis in Oswestry, with infrastructure requirements not really appropriately considered. The interpretation of over-intensification of development needs to be adjusted accordingly. There are several similar proposals in the area, and the cumulative impact needs to be considered, as this has a significant impact on the sustainability of Oswestry, and particularly Oswestry Town Centre. And it is clear that there's a need for a stronger policy framework in this area to support officers and members in their deliberations, and the absence of one is tangible. Local policies and guidelines would benefit developers, elected members and the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for clarification? No, thank you very much. And our third speaker is Joe Salt, who's the agent and in favour. Right, Joe, so 3 minutes from when you start speaking. The other button, because it goes red. That's it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Joe Salt from Creative Planning. I'm here to speak in support of the application at 23 Cross Street. The recommendation is one of approval following an assessment of the proposal against the council's current planning policies. The proposal is for a small 6-bed HMO. All of the rooms are single occupancy but exceed the minimum size for a double room. The proposal as a whole exceeds all of the council's HMO guidelines, including internal amenity space and kitchen areas. The maximum number of people residing at the site will be no more than 6. The proposal therefore cannot be categorised as overdevelopment by any prescriptive measure and would certainly not result in overcrowding. The proposal will provide valuable, affordable accommodation to those who have no other option but to rent and share. It would also reuse the upper floors of a building in the town centre that has been vacant for 2 years. The principle of development is therefore established. The applicants run a number of similar HMOs that are predominantly occupied by working professionals. The case officer has been provided with evidence of high demand for this type of accommodation, with more than 20 inquiries from local people in a 2-week period via spareroom.com. Access to the site is via an external staircase to the rear over a flat roof, which is, I'll admit, slightly unusual. However, this is the property's legal right of access. We understand that a lack of parking and amenity space have been raised as concerns. To be clear, neither designated parking nor external amenity space are usually requirements for town centre living. Number 25 Cross Street next door, which is a residential property in the upper floors, does not benefit from parking or amenity space. The council's highway officer has assessed the scheme and concludes that due to the highly sustainable location of the site, car ownership is by no means guaranteed by the occupants, as they have access to a full range of public transport and facilities. Numbers 5 to 9 Cross Street, to the southeast of the site, was granted permission in 2021 to convert the upper floors into 9 residential apartments. No external amenity space or parking was provided to serve these 9 apartments, and there's been no change in policy since 2021. Therefore, these cannot be reasons to refuse the application or as a barometer for over-intensification. The proposed occupants, along with the existing town centre residents, have 3 public spaces to enjoy, all within walking distance, as set out in the officer's report. With regards to waste management, a waste management plan has been submitted as part of the application and has been assessed by the council's own waste management consultants, who have found it acceptable. The upper floors of 23 Cross Street cannot be practically used for retail or commercial purposes. The best use of the site is for residential, which will only provide a benefit to the vitality of the town centre and generate more business. Thank you. For these reasons and also the unequivocal support of officers and consultees, we believe that the application should be granted permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for clarification? Yes, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Chair. A quick question for you. The current access, which I've seen from the photographs, is a metal staircase. Yeah. Is that access at the moment used for low usage emergency exit, or is it used for access, or has it been used for access from these buildings on a high usage basis in the past? See what I mean? Is it effectively a fire escape at the moment?
It's the main access into the upper floors. The upper floors have been divided to the right, so there's no access between the two. So the only way to access the upper floors.
Thank you.
And me. Yeah. Yes, Councillor.
Hi, thank you for that. Just a clarification, you mentioned it's on spareroom.com. Is it currently being rented out on spareroom.com, the property?
No, it was an exercise to speculatively advertise the rooms should they come forward.
Yes.
One final point. Thank you, Chair. One of the points you made was 4 of the rooms were going to be for single occupancy, but there's not going to be more than 6 people in there.
No, they're all for single occupancy, but all of the bedrooms are larger than a double bed.
Okay, sorry, I thought the point you made was 4 of the rooms were going to be for single occupancy, but no more than 6 people.
No, all 6 rooms are single occupancy.
Okay, thank you very much. Back to the officer. Any comments from, any response to any of those comments?
Yeah, I think it's important to note with regards to fire safety and means of escape. Obviously, beyond planning considerations, there is fire safety legislation, building regulations, and the applicant will also have to go on and obtain a HMO licensing certificate, which is very stringent in the occupant safety means of access, and it's not for the planning officer or planning policy to duplicate those other legislations and regulations. We look at what's before us in terms of the siting, the scale of development, and is there a suitable means of access. Whether it's safe and meets regulations, that will be dealt with by the relevant legislations. And that's waste management is strictly controlled under HMO licensing, as well as number of occupancy and access. So whilst we bear them in mind in regards to the intensification and use of the site in context to its location, the actual final details on whether they're deemed safe and acceptable will be dealt with under building regulations and HMO licensing checks. I think, yeah, Joe just clarified that all rooms is going to be a maximum occupancy of 6 persons. I think his point he was making is the rooms exceed what's necessarily for a single person. So it just shows they're spacious bedrooms, providing above and beyond what is required by an HMO licence. So whilst they meet the double standard room sizes, they'll only be occupied by 1 person. Yeah, unless there's anything else to respond to.
Thank you. I'm just going to press you slightly on the waste management because so is there any detail? I mean, are we talking about 6 full-size wheelie bins in that passageway, or is there any other detail you can share?
Yeah, the management plan put forward relates to 3 bins, 2 general waste, 1 recycle bin. And I think another important thing to note is we deal with the application before us. So I know it was touched on that this might encourage neighbouring sites to go down this route as well. But we are looking at what's in front of us. Should other sites do that, and the access and the use of it then becomes an issue, and doors are being blocked, fire exits are being obstructed, then that will be unacceptable. But in terms of this application, there is space there to manoeuvre around the bin and doors, and you'll see on that rendered wall where they will sit, and they can sit comfortably without blocking any doors or means of escape.
Thank you. Okay, so we're opening up to the committee. Councillor Davis.
Thank you. I appreciate what you're saying regarding the fire risk assessment, and that's out of our remit. However, the property has got 1 access, a flat roof, as we've found out this afternoon, and that's their main access and egress. So in the event that there was an accident or there was a fire along those lines, those residents in that property have got no other way out of that building. And that is a real concern to me, even though it's up to the fire department to make their own final call. I appreciate what you're saying there, but to know that should there be a fire in that building, those 6 residents on those 2 floors have got no other way out of that building concerns me greatly. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor. Yes.
Sorry,
just a second.
So
do you want to answer the point first?
It's on the same point.
Mm-hmm.
Just to add to that, can you clarify what activity occurs on the ground floor business? Because that would obviously inform the fire risk as well. So, thank you.
I believe there are shops on the ground floor, aren't they?
Yeah, it's currently a vape retail shop. Obviously, that would be subject to its own health and safety regulations, building regulations, and it should be running in line with them. If it's not, then that's a matter for enforcement legislations against them, as, like say, these sites are no longer associated. But yeah, it's currently a retail shop.
So building control is also one of the services that I manage, and it won't get building regulations if it doesn't meet the government requirements for fire safety. So there are other means of access, can sometimes be out of windows for fire services. Whilst it's not ideal, it's not for the planning department to consider these things. They have to then get the building regulations, and as mentioned, they won't get the HMO licence if they don't have the building regulations, and we can only consider the planning case in front of us today.
I appreciate what you just said there, fair enough. However, in your report, you've acknowledged that access limitations, there are concerns regarding it. But the use of an unused buildings outweighing those concerns you have. So you're saying using that building is actually outweighs the concerns we have on the safety aspects of that building, which I find really quite hard to accept. I would have thought actually the well-being of people living in that property is far more important than whether those rooms are being used or not.
Yes, and that we've identified the limitations with regards to the access in that it won't be suitable for all, i.e. for maybe someone that's impaired disability, but it still remains a safe and usable access for others. So we do acknowledge the limitations and apply the relevant weight there. But when you look at this, the benefits of development providing low cost, affordable accommodation in sustainable locations with sustainable transport links that meet internal living standards, to provide an acceptable space of living internally, as well as having access to public spaces and social environment. Whilst the limitations there, that matter alone isn't enough to outweigh that balance of benefits.
Just to clarify, Councillor Davis, I don't think the report is weighing the safety of the building against the need to use the building. They're saying that the safety of the building will be determined by building regulations. The calculations are there, but they're not that calculation. I don't think that's reasonable.
It was written in the actual paper.
Okay. And I'm going to move on. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Chair. I still have serious concerns about the access. I acknowledge what you're saying about them coming later. That's great. It seems to me that the sale of the ground floor separately to the upper floors has created the access problem, because previously you would have had access through the ground floor. But that's just a point that I'm raising. A quick question about the bike store, if you don't mind. Good that it's there, but I'm querying the bike store is on the first floor, isn't it? Which means presumably people utilising it are going to carry their bikes across a roof and down a fire escape style set of stairs. So while I acknowledge and applaud the fact that they've got bike store there, it's going to be very difficult for people to actually use it, surely, in order to get their bikes in and out of the property. That's the one point. Shall I carry on, because I've got a couple of other points, or do you want me to stop there and let you keep going? Please keep going. Right, thank you. The alleyway is a public right of way, I believe, in which case, should there be bins permanently stored on a public right of way? I mean, the other business, I don't see that there are bins there all the time. It's almost like they've got somewhere to actually keep them, and they put them out there when they are due to be emptied. So I'm just querying whether you can permanently keep the bins on a public right of way, which is what that alleyway actually is. And lastly, you'll be glad to know, can I reiterate the parking issues, please? I acknowledge that not everyone's going to have a car that's likely to actually go into this this property. However, I will echo the town clerk when he says that a number of times the parking area in the town has been cited as suitable for people's parking, and that is not the case at the moment. I think the report calls it a good, cheap parking, but it's only cheap at the moment at night because it's not being charged at night. If we go back to when I was last on the council, that was a 24-hour charged car park, in which case overnight would probably cost you £6 or more a day to park a car. And that obviously is not a cheap way of parking your car. At the end of the day, the parking in the town centre is at a premium. And I would just be cautious of citing public car parks as residential parking, because strictly speaking, they are not meant to be. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Officers, do you want to respond to those?
Yeah, the first being the bike store. Obviously, it is deemed a benefit, whilst it's probably not the most desirable way of storing them. obviously not every occupant it will potentially hold a bike. A lot of people travel around town centres on lightweight scooters, foldable bikes. It's a modern way of getting around. So yeah, it will mean carrying up the staircase and to the bike store area. The security wise, it's much more sufficient in that, because obviously not many bike stores externally are that secure these days, unfortunately. So it's obviously a limited weight applied to this benefit, but it's there and it's being provided. Like I say, there are modern bicycles and scooters that fold down, are very lightweight. So there's nothing to say that it can't be used. But it is there and it is noted.
I remember the bikes of my childhood, unfortunately, which were much bigger and heavier. Yeah.
Through the chair, please.
And
And
obviously occupants taking on these rentals and these accommodations will be aware of the layout and setup, and they'll know whether they want to utilise that or not. And with regards to the right of way, as long as it's not being entirely obstructed, there's no reason why the bins can't be located there on a permanent basis. They're only allowed to be pulled out on bin collection day onto the cross street. But as long as there's no physical obstruction and people can still pass by, they're within their right to store them there. Again, bin storage, waste management is strictly controlled by a HMO licence. From a planning point of view, there's a provision there. It's within good location of the accommodation to which it's going to serve. And this is 6 persons. 3 bins should be more than enough to accommodate 6 persons. That could be comparable to that of a large family dwelling. So yeah, again, like Tabitha said, from a planning perspective, we just got to see that there is a provision there. There's a process in place. They're able to pull it out on collection days, and it doesn't fully obstruct the public right of way.
Thank you. I'm going to call myself next, and Councillor Ebbs. I can see you've Councillor Ebbs, but you have come in already. I'm going to take others who haven't come in yet, but I will come back to you. Just a few comments from me. So first of all, with regards to the access, I'm just thinking about places that I've delivered newsletters to recently. I can think of upstairs flats with metal stairs going up. So it's not great, but it's people live there, and it provides low cost accommodation. With regards to the bins, I can think of places where I've delivered where the bins are just outside on an alleyway, so that feels okay to me. With regards to the use of the property, I think the point was well made. You can't quite imagine this. It clearly isn't suitable as a family home. It's not suitable for children given the lack of outside space. It clearly isn't suitable as commercial space because of the access arrangements. You couldn't have a range of customers with accessibility needs accessing it as a commercial space. This does feel like a suitable use for it, and mobile, low-paid workers who are not in families need somewhere to live, and this feels like a suitable use of the property that couldn't otherwise be used. And the final thing on parking, I think the point was already made that that town centre living of this nature doesn't come with parking, and there's no way that we could insist on that as part of the development. Similarly, if we think about the riverside over there, if we're going to put flats there, we're not to provide them all with parking. It simply isn't realistic for us to be thinking that town centre living, new accommodation town centres could possibly do that, which is why we need good sustainable transport options. Councillor Ebbs.
So I suppose less of a question and more, I would just like to explain my thinking. I would like to, and perhaps a question might arise after that. So for starters, I'd like to concur with many of Julian Dean's points. I think it's good that there's a proposal to try and utilise space which has not been utilised for 2 years, which is a considerable amount of time. I think it's good that it provides affordable housing. I think that's important, especially for lower paid workers who are on their own. It's useful from that perspective. I suppose a point of clarification to help me understand. I understand Oswestry is part of a business improvement district bid, and as far as I understand, this area is classified as part of that designated area in which businesses are meant to benefit from. I would just like me to understand to what extent does this factor into the weight of our determination when we are trying to regenerate Oswestry as a business area, and then businesses are saying that it would have an adverse impact on their trade, especially well-established businesses. So I'd just like to get officers to clarify to what weight should I place in that determination, and if it places weight at all, and just help me clarify that point really.
I think there's 2 points there, because there's the one side you're talking about the impact on the businesses, which Mr. Blake raised, but then there's also the impact of having more people in the town centre. Will have more people living there using the local amenities, likely to be spending more money in the local area. So it's a twofold situation. So I don't think it's all negative. There are many positives, and having people living in the town centre helps maintain and regenerate a town centre.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
Hi, Councillor Rowley. I have a number of concerns. Obviously, 2 months ago, this very committee was sat here dwelling over another HMO in Oswestry, which was rejected. And here we are now talking about another HMO and potentially on the lines of about to approve it. My concerns are, whilst we've already discussed that there's no overdevelopment, I do believe there is over-intensification and inadequate living standards. As with the last HMO, lack of privacy and mini space, they've only got a K-glass bath, that's all there is. But something that really strikes me out is this one, is the alleyway. If anyone from the Oswestry area, this is not a well-known alleyway at all. There's a number of alleyways like you get in many market towns in Oswestry. This is not a well-known one. And I'm concerned that potentially this could become a place for people to hang around undetected, and is quite concerned. Already stated by the planning officer, the conservation, the building is non-designated heritage asset within the Oswestry Conservation Area, but the proposed conversion may risk harming the character and appearance of the conservation area. And it's only recently in Oswestry that we had a planning application refused based on conservation. When it was trying to enhance the area. We've already discussed the parking concerns and access via safety. But one point I want to make is a couple of years ago, a HMO was approved in Oswestry in the old Hope House Church down on the back of Middleton Road. That HMO is now closed because there's no demand for a HMO in Oswestry, and is now going back under let. There are currently 133 empty social houses in Oswestry. So again, I ask, if there's such a demand, why have we got 133 empty social houses in Oswestry? And my final point is, in the daytime, this area is a pedestrianised area as well. That hasn't been touched on at all. And based on these considerations, I'm more than happy to propose that this committee rejects this application.
Thank you for your proposal. We'll come back to it. I've got Councillor Davis, and then I'm going to see if anybody else wishes to speak before we debate that proposal.
No, my comments are all been answered, thank you. But I will.
So we have a secondary proposal. So could you just outline again the reasons that you're looking for refusal?
Yeah, so over intensification, adequate living standards, lack of amenity spaces, inadequate waste management arrangements, impact on conservation area and heritage asset, and parking highway considered access via safety.
Okay, so before we move that to a vote, I will just ask officers to comment on those, because as is always the case, we do want to ensure that we are making a decision on strong grounds. So
that's fine. Yep, so obviously with regards to waste management, officers and policies satisfied there's a provision there that can support the level and scale and intensity of this development. Town centre parking, whilst it's not aimed for permanent residential space to utilise by permanent residents, on the flip side of that, this is located in a highly sustainable location where facilities can be located on foot or by bus. People will not be reliant on a motor vehicle. Worst case scenario, say all 6 residents were to own a car, it's likely they utilise it daily like most of us do. So they're not going to be taking up town centre and visitor spaces during the day. It's likely going to be overnight when it's much quieter and car parks are left empty. So I don't think there'll be a significant impact should the occupants of this accommodation want to utilise town centre car parking. And I just would like to point out with regards to parking, waste management, officers' considerations made and the decisions, how we've come to this recommendation, they're also informed and backed up by inspectors' take on these matters as well, and appeal decisions that have been made. So should this go to appeal, I know that there are decisions that have been approved in line with the officers' considerations on taking this approach on sustainable location. If this accommodation was in the countryside with no transport links, no access to parking, public spaces, it'd be another matter. But this is very sustainable location and provides a public benefit in terms of supporting local businesses through increased footfall, low cost affordable housing. I noticed you touched on social housing. Obviously this is classed as private because it's rented on the market. So the demand is not completely comparable. It might be that some people don't qualify for social housing, and this is a way for them to get affordable accommodation on the open market through private rentals.
I will take one more officer, then I'll come back to you if you want to if there's anything you want to respond to in terms of your proposal.
It would be difficult on the conservation area point because we don't have backing from the conservation team as well, because the alterations are minimal. And I would just say that the council, we were debating on housing numbers earlier and housing supply. So we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. And whilst this isn't a site that we would be specifically generally making these answers on, I would ask you to bear that in mind when you're making comments about housing demand, because it's not the line that we usually get from people that there's an oversupply of housing availability in the town centres.
Thank you. Anything you want to just?
Yes, I'm still concerned that we do have a HMO in Oswestry currently that's empty because there's no demand for it. Yet we're saying there is demand here, and also just a stone throw away, literally across the road, we rejected an application for an HMO. Yet this one seems okay. I'm really worried that if we approve this one, then the problem we just open up the floodgates for all the others in Oswestry. Then we have a situation where there's over demand in Oswestry. The alleyway is a concern. I know you.
We're repeating points.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Can I just remind us, each case is to be taken on its own merits, and we can't be worrying about what's happened on the other sites.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move this one to a vote. So this is whether we are supporting the proposal to reject from Councillor Rowley.
Roll call vote. So on that basis, if you can indicate whether you're voting for or against, please, Andy Davis.
So do we just clarify? So can we actually, to make the language simple, so let's make it against is supporting the proposal to reject the, rather than
no for. The proposal on the table is to reject.
Am I making it more complicated?
Yeah.
Beg your pardon.
We're supporting the application.
Okay.
So before the applicant, we're supporting Councillor Rowley's application.
No, the proposal was to reject. So if you're voting for, that's agreeing to reject.
Yes. Councillor Rowley has made a proposal that you reject. If you are for his proposal, then you are for a rejection.
I'm for a rejection.
That's, we haven't got to yet, but we're about to.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So on that basis, Andy Davis.
Sure. I'm for rejection.
Yeah. So Rosemary Dartnell.
Abstain.
Greg Ebbs.
Abstain.
Brendan Mullen.
For.
Adam Pfeiffer.
Abstain.
Gary Groves.
For.
Mark Owen.
For.
Ed Potter.
For.
Rosie Redford. For. Carl Rowley.
For.
And Julian Dean.
Against.
Okay, so that one's rejected.
Okay. Okay, we need to get some clarity into the reasons on that one. So we're just going to go around the houses a little bit on that. So do you want to address the committee on that?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanting to know for clarification the exact reasons for refusal, because there was a lot that were raised by Councillor Rowley, and I think there was some feedback from officers, for example, on heritage, for example. What particular elements of the heritage impact would you like on the refusal decision notice? Because the report says that the alterations will be minimal. So what does committee think differently to what has been put in the report about heritage, for example?
So my point's right, and I did say that the building is non-designated heritage asset within the Ulster Conservation Area, but the proposed consortium does have external alterations, risk, and harming the character of it. So, for example, they're looking at changing the windows and putting into PVC windows, and that does say in the report. So there is risk of that appearance of that conservation area, and there's some of us here are in the Ulster area. And we are seeing other applications refused based on similar considerations. And I know we talk about merit and different things in that, but there is some that there have been applications very lately that have done nothing but enhance the area of Alderstreet, and then we see a refusal on it. So I think that's every right for that one to stand, really.
Yeah, I would agree. It fails to preserve and enhance the character of Oswestry.
I think I'm gonna have to move on. We may have to. Okay, we're gonna have to revisit this. Okay, we'll move on to the next application, and then we may have to revisit the reasons for this at the end. Thank you. So the next item, if I can whiz down to it, is item 7, the extension of existing Shrewsbury Sports Village, including swimming pool with viewing areas, fitness suite, studios, group cycle, and ancillary spaces. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this next application relates to Shrewsbury Sports Village. That's an existing site and facility located on Sundawn Road. The proposal is to expand the existing provision and sports facilities based on the site. The reason why it's before us today is because Shropshire Council are the applicant, therefore it's a mandatory requirement for it to be at committee. The site plan shows the context of the site. So the red edged area is to which will be Can I put this in mind quickly? I think that would be worth a try. Oh. Okay. Struggle with that's not down there. So it should be the same. I think it looks. Got bugs and DU tab as well. It's one to the side of me, but
yeah.
Yes. So I continue just outlining the development and we can go to the slides once he's back. Yeah. Yeah. So in context of policy, the site, whilst it's in quite a built up, what looks like an urban area, is actually defined as countryside, but it's an existing established sports and leisure facility. There are, obviously there's an NHS medical practice to the west, and there's beyond that, then the highway structure is forward of the site with residential housing beyond. Then beyond the application site is all the associated playing fields. They will not be impacted on as part of the development. So there's been extensive detailed supporting information provided with this application. I think it's been ongoing in terms of being established and coming to where we are today for some time in terms of its sustainability, design, layout, and an extensive background and research was carried out in terms of its location, where it was best to provide this provision within Shrewsbury. The site at the minute currently provides leisure and sports facilities, which are referred to as dry, and that's like your fitness suites, sports halls. This proposal will expand and enhance on those, but it also introduces what they refer to as wet facilities, and that will be the 2 swimming pools, which is a new provision and a much needed one in Shrewsbury. The extension extends forward of the building, and it currently extends over what is utilised as parking. The loss of parking has been made up elsewhere within the red boundary. We getting closer? And it will actually, as well as maintaining an existing provision, it will result in an increase of 111 spaces. There was a lot of space within the site currently that was unutilised, or it was unutilised really, grassed areas, planted areas. So this development has been designed in a way to bring all them areas of the site into use, providing more parking, planting. Hopefully get the plans up to show you then now. The layout of the site will also introduce a new drop-off area forward of the building, a designated secure cycle store. Roof plan details the solar array which is to be proposed on the new part of the building. Go on to science. Beyond.
Yeah. God.
There's been no objections from consultees on this proposal, subject to necessary conditions. It is important to note that 3 additional conditions have been suggested post the publication of the report. They relate to tree planting, tree protection and landscaping. They were just later confirmed due to the late submission of an improved and updated landscaping plan. It just provided additional planting within the car parking spaces to what was originally submitted. Yep, so like I say, we've got some detailed floor plans, layout plans. If they've all been, what's going to be provided has all been bullet pointed and broken down in the officer's report. I think the new pool facility and spectator area is one of the newer additions on top of the enhancements to the existing facilities. I'll just show you the layout plan. So you'll see that the extension extends here forward of the existing building, and overflow and additional car parking has been moved over to the east. Like I say, all the sports playing fields will not be impacted on. They are all beyond the red edge boundary south. Whilst they fall outside of the site area, there is also a belt of trees that are going to be planted leading down to the football pitches. Again, just to provide that additional mitigation due to loss of trees that was in the existing car park, and to ensure the development integrates well with its surroundings, because whilst it's quite urban in development to the north, east and west, the south does extend out into open countryside playing fields. So that's why a lot of landscaping has been proposed around the car parking areas to the south of the site, again just so it sits a bit more comfortably with its setting. Improved links and connectivity to the neighbouring site. There's footpaths and a public space, green areas, for public to utilise, just to make the site a bit more welcoming and obvious that it is a public and community service provision and benefit. Additional car parking points, electric car parking points have been incorporated. Additional disabled spaces. Go on to, we look at the design of the building. The palette of materials have been taken from nearby developments with the buff coloured cladding, traditional pale red brick found in and around Shropshire, and very consistent with the housing development across the highway. You'll also note a lot of glazing has been proposed on the elevations. Again, that helps it appear as a welcoming building. The outside can see in and the inside can see out. There's got some site sections here that show how the extension will sit against the existing buildings. This just demonstrates how it won't be over-domineering, greater in height in many aspects. It'll just sit in line and against the existing without being too intrusive. I think it's important to note, if we go back to the site plan, that the building is set back within the site slightly. Existing landscaping all along the Sundawn Road will remain as existing. So it's not really until you enter the site, unless you're looking at your autumn winter days when vegetation is a bit more sparse, that you get full view of the proposal. I think we've got some images further along. Following consultation with the landscaping officer and green infrastructure team, they're fully supportive of the proposal and don't feel that there'll be any great visual harm or impact due to the site's well-established existing use, the surrounding context of development, and the extensive tree planting proposed. Yeah, it's hard to get images because of the landscaping that remains that's in place. Like I say, it will be more visible when you physically enter the site and stand on the car park. They want to ensure that this facility is continued to be provided throughout the development. So here's a phasing plan to give you an understanding of how the development will be phased, starting with the car parking areas, which is obviously very important, as that's what's going to be, that's where the extension it will sit in place of. Followed by the community areas, tree planting, supporting documents in terms of noise assessments, B&G provision, which in this instance, the biodiversity net gain is deemed as significant. That will be controlled for 30 years, subject to a memorandum of understanding to secure that. Overall, officers conclude that the benefits of this development significantly outweigh any limitations or harm caused. The main harm that we feel that was caused or was considered in this case was the loss of existing trees within the site, not the site boundaries. However, that's been very strongly mitigated and compensated through new planting, social, communal green space areas. We did have one objection raised from a member of public. This has been addressed and considered by officers in the report on paragraph 4.23. The basis of the objections was questioning the research behind choosing this location for the facility in comparison to other sites. Like I say, it has been ongoing for some time, and extensive research has come to this conclusion where we are today. It also made note of the David Lloyd facility next door and questioned whether it was a necessity to provide this provision on a neighbouring site. But the business models of these two sites are very different in that this is a public community facility. The David Lloyd is a member's facility. So they are built different in the clientele to which they'll attract. And it doesn't change the fact that Shrewsbury do not have a competing swimming pool environment for people that the local clubs and sports centres that need this. Yeah, just to confirm that there's no objections from consultees, and that's the officer's recommendation, is to approve this subject to relevant conditions to control the development along the process to ensure no harm is caused to neighbouring sites and their amenities.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have two speakers. First is Mr. Martin Jones, who's speaking against. Thank you for your patience, Martin. It's been a long meeting. You get 3 minutes. Okay, you get 3 minutes from when you start speaking. If you press the right-hand button, then we will be able to hear you properly.
Good afternoon. Shropshire Council financially looking at the abyss. If this is to go forward as a loan, then perhaps you should look at the pensions body that currently holds £3 billion very nearly, and invest some of that rather than seeking outside assistance, and actually put some skin in the game. Use the pension fund to fund it, and that will make sure that it becomes a viable option, not just a little challenge to steal members from David Lloyd. Accessibility, there's no plans to further improve infrastructure around it, i.e. lighting down the canal path, the cycle lanes, bus routes. On this strategic leisure plan, the implied that there would be more accessibility, but with fewer bus routes and limited parking spaces at a weekend, that site is overflowing. It is absolutely rammed, and I speak from experience. Plans initially show that it is less accessible. However, that may change. Following the strategic leisure plan, there is no access for disabled swimmers at the quarry. There is, and always has been. The council chose to close that down. There are lifts and changing rooms that will accommodate disabled swimmers. That this says there is not. There is. The new pool will give no money for additional infrastructure, actually isolating more an ageing population to access. And again, if you use the quarry, you will see just how many people use that facility. Walking there from Meal Brace side of Oswestry would prove extremely difficult and force people to drive. And we already know that the Northern Relief Road that's not going to go ahead, how difficult that road is to access that area of Sundawn. Money for infrastructure, there's new money for that, but there's not enough to support Sundawn in any other meaningful way, only for a new swimming pool via a loan. Is the money coming from Sport England and Serco? Serco have a vested interest and are then competing against David Lloyd to take away users. That's not a benefit to citizens and residents, but just purely to increase a firm's profits at our expense. If you're following the strategic leisure study, then the following points should be considered. The facility of the quarry. Okay, right, I'll pass this on to James, but there is so much wrong with this that it really shouldn't be considered at all.
And
sorry, I apologize.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Second speaker. Oh, sorry. Any questions for any clarification questions, please? Yeah.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to ask, you objecting on behalf of, as a local resident, or
on behalf of some residents who have requested, who are unable to attend and don't have access to the internet or are able to access the portal, because the planning portal, unless you're familiar with the planning application number, is very difficult to navigate for some.
Thank you. Any others? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. No need to apologise. And our final speaker is Peter Gilbertson, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. I am Peter Gilbertson. I am a project manager with the property
and Development Department, and I have submitted this application on behalf of Shropshire Council. The Council agreed that we should develop detailed proposals and submit this application at the meeting on the 26th of September 2024. The rationale for these proposals were recently reviewed by the Scrutiny Committee on the 13th of November, and if your committee were today to grant planning permission, the next step in the process would be to debate the proposals further at Cabinet on the 21st of January next year before a final decision on whether to proceed with the construction phase would be made by full council on the 26th of February in the new year. The proposals presented here today mark a significant step forward for the well-being and future of Shropshire residents. If approved, the proposal will transform the sports village to deliver a modern, accessible, environmental and financially sustainable leisure facility that will serve Shropshire and its residents for decades and generations to come. Our analysis has shown that over 200,000 residents live within a 20-minute travel radius of the Sports Village site, and also 30% of the households within walking distance of the Sports Village come from deprived communities. A key feature of the proposal will be Shropshire's first competition standard swimming pool, an 8-lane 25-metre pool. There will be a studio teaching pool and a children's splash pay area. Both pools will have easy access steps and modern wheelchair electric lifts. Pools are an expensive item to operate, and therefore we're also proposing a 130 station fitness gym and new dance studios to make the site financially viable for the future. There will be a wellness and toning centre for elderly users and those with mobility needs, and a larger children's play area to help meet the needs of families and young children. Importantly, the new facilities are designed to be fully accessible to all users, including those with disabilities and families, with improved changing areas, a changing places facility and a new reception space. Sustainability has been at the heart of this project. The new facility will be all electric, powered with photovoltaic cells, air source heat pumps, and designed and built to the BREEAM Excellent standard, helping to progress the Council's net zero target. We're also exploring further decarbonisation efforts and are looking at the feasibility of solar panels over the car parks and the potential for a local heat network, projects which would run in parallel with the main development, subject to funding being made available. We have had over 30 letters of support for this particular proposal and only one objection, together with the objection today. The proposal is a combination of extensive consultation that was held in spring 24 with over 1,300 respondents.
You're running out of time.
This is a capital funded project. The estimated cost is 29 million.
Okay.
Sorry.
You have run out of time. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So before we get responses from officers, just to remind the committee, we're not relitigating the issues of investment or the quarry pool or decisions or even the financial viability of the site. Those things are still up for grabs politically. It's coming back to cabinet, so those debates will take place and there will be opportunities to take part in those. We're making a decision purely based on the planning application. So whilst I can't realistically expect people not to mention those other things, I would ask you to move quickly to planning points in your contributions when we get to discussing this. But before we do that, just see if the officers have got a response to the presentations.
Yeah, the first being the point made with regards to access and access to the site. We obviously, full consultation was carried out with the highways team, and it was concluded that the surrounding infrastructure, traffic calming measures in terms on Sundawn Road in terms of roundabouts and pedestrian crossings are more than sufficient to deal with this scale of expansion of the site. With regards to within the site, disabled access has been made and incorporated within the new development. Spaces are suitably located near the access, and the sufficient infrastructure within the site with regards to drop-off points, supporting any potential future events with regards to the swimming pools. All these matters have been supported with detailed parking strategy information. There's nothing before us to say that the existing infrastructure or the site, the space within the site can't deal with this scale of development for the improvement and expansion of an existing facility.
Thank you very much. Okay, over to members. Mr. Mullen.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Mullen. I might surprise the Chair with a comment on sustainability, but in that it's not sustainable enough. So at the moment it's conceived to be run off solar panels and air source heat pumps. This will be nowhere near carbon neutral because obviously solar panels have the limitations in terms of season, weather, clouds, all the rest of it. And the air source heat pumps in cold weather have very low grade energy to work with. So at times it'll be very dependent on the grid using, for the foreseeable future, still predominantly fossil fueled power sources. The bigger issue I have also is with the long-term sustainability of the equipment itself. These things wear out fairly quickly. So panels, you can get 20 years out of them. Air pumps are sort of 10 to 20 years. So with the projected lifespan of this facility, you're going to get through 2 or 3 generations of replacements on those. And of course, at the moment with the solar panels, you can't recycle them economically. So we're talking potential landfill there. So another environmental issue. Also produced in China with fossil fuels, predominantly coal. Questions over slave labour in that market as well. So there are issues with that. Now, we've mentioned the neighbourhood heat network, not be used in a pyrolysis facility. I would move that instead of eventually moving to pyrolysis and having to waste time messing around with heat pumps and solar panels, we should be doing a full life cycle analysis both of energy usage and carbon footprint of side by side a pyrolysis installation.
We're moving beyond this application.
Well, it's sustainability is a planning issue, isn't it? So I would suggest that the applicant should have a condition that they do a side by side analysis to see what is the most sustainable option, because both options are open. The pyrolysis equipment is produced locally by an arm's length company, partly owned by the council, so they should be motivated there. But in terms of the sustainability piece, it seems to be a much superior option.
Thank you. I'm sure people in Norway will be interested to hear that heat pumps don't work in cold weather.
It's not that they don't work, but they work less well. The thermodynamics dictates that.
Plenty of cold countries that have been using them very efficiently for a very long time. Other members, please. Yes, Councillor Davis.
Just of clarity on the disabled access to it, so it's fully DTA compliant. I will sort of comply with, currently in the quarry, there's lifting mechanisms along those lines. That's all going to be incorporated into the pool design as well. For disabled access, you'll have full disabled access, lifts, etc. Hoists.
Yeah, it's all been part of, and it's incorporated with the design, especially with the swimming facilities.
Sure, because in my previous life, I used to take children to the pool quite a lot. Having that accessibility for young children with lifts and hoists is very important, so that's going to be incorporated within the plans.
The layout definitely incorporates it. With regards to hoists and so on, them additional, that's something I'd have to confirm, or Peter might be able to confirm for us.
I'll speak to that. Yes, yes, both pools will have easy access steps. So there'll be a set of steps going in with a handrail for people who've got a degree of mobility. We're also proposing that each pool, both the competition pool, the standard pool and the learner pool, will have what's called a pool pod. So if you've been to the Whitchurch pool, you'll see one of these in action. It's very popular with wheelchair users. This is the wheelchair user will decant into a waterproof wheelchair. They can wheel themselves in through a gate, press the button, and the wheelchair will lift you into the pool. And then you go for a swim. Or if you've got a carer, the carer can sit in the new model that's available. The carer can sit in the lift with them. So they'll have electric lifts that both go into the pool and out. So it'll be a major improvement. We've only got one pool pod at the moment in Shropshire, and that's in Whitchurch. There'll also be there'll be disabled changing rooms in the changing facility, and there'll also be a changing places facility. So changing place facility is an enhanced disabled changing room which has lifts, and again it's designed for people who need a carer, and it gives you extra space and extra lift space. And as the officer said, the whole site is on one level. There are no steps, so you'll go from your disabled bay or drop-off point, and you can go through to the poolside without encountering any steps at all. So it's a major improvement in terms of accessibility.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Potter.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chair. I think from a planning perspective, which is what we're looking at, if we move aside, like you've said, all the other debates and things that we've talked about for years about this, from a planning perspective, I'm reasonably content with this. I think the one thing is, I mean, you can use the phrase, they build it, people will come, is around the parking, particularly with competition facilities. That is a slight concern of mine. I know there's additional parking been provided, but potentially, if you're running swimming competitions, buses, or a lot of people transporting people from A to B to these competitions, that is going to be a concern, particularly on a weekend when there's the football going on and the playing field's being used, as well as an increased gym facility. So that is a slight concern there. I think there is plenty of sort of space on that site to make sure that is accommodated. But from a planning point of view, other than I'd say probably put more parking in somewhere, or we need to look at better routes of access. But we've got to realise, I think, particularly people will drive there, particularly if they're coming around from all around the county, because it will be a county facility. I think parking is probably the only thing that flags for me, but I'm reasonably content with it from a planning perspective. So that's where I am.
Are you making a proposal?
Yeah, make a proposal to approve, subject to the conditions outlined in the report.
Before we go to that, I had Councillor Rowley already indicating.
Yeah, I'm actually a keen swimmer myself, and swimming competitions. There's not enough swimming pools in Shropshire. And also, with Shrewsbury being our sort of like county town, we really need to be sort of like showcasing that. I too, with Ed's concerns about parking, it is a bit of a worry because that place does get busy down there at the best of times. But I think we can also, at competition, during competition, when you could potentially have a big competition when it comes to swimming. We can start utilising park and rides and making sure that competitors use their park and ride facilities. And as a county, we can further enhance that, put more buses on, etc. I do have just a couple of concerns, and this is basically I don't know, the gentleman may be able to answer this question. There is a possibility of losing tennis courts and a netball pitch for this. Can we confirm that?
I'm going to come to the officer actually, because I want to avoid a debate with the applicant.
Yeah, that was brought to our attention through the objector. Yeah, it doesn't form part of this application. There's no loss of sports pitches as part of this application. It may be something coming forward in the future. Sports England were consulted on this application and raised no objections. Again, they feel the benefits significantly outweigh any potential limitations. So it was a speculative objection on what might happen, and we'll deal with that as and when it's put before us.
Thanks for that, Chair, and I'm happy to second Councillor Potter's.
Thank you very much. I'm minded to move this to a vote. Can we just recap the verbal conditions, please?
Recap the, sorry. Just make sure I'm included in the recommendation.
Oh yes, apologies. There was due to a later submission of a revised landscaping master plan. 3 conditions that were noted on the later papers relate to tree planting, tree protection, and further detailed landscaping plan being provided, in addition to what's detailed on the agenda and the report. So it's just 3 landscaping conditions, and they're all protection measures.
Yeah, go on, Rosemary.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask it. So the landscape that we're looking up here will be improved on in which way?
This forms the basis of it, and it's illustrative. However, the landscaping officer wants details of the types of trees to be planted. It's more the finer details with regards to what's going to be used, but this is theoretically the layout of what the landscaping will provide.
So based on those with the addition of those explained conditions, we're going to move to approve. We had a seconder, I think, with Councillor Rowley. Yep. So if we can move to a vote, please.
Okay, so on the basis, if you can indicate whether you're voting for or against Andy Davis.
For.
Rosemary Dartnell.
For.
Greg Epps.
For.
Brendan Mallon.
For.
Adam Faither.
For.
Gary Groves.
For.
Mark Owen.
For.
Ed Potter.
For.
Rosie Radford. For. Paul Riley.
For.
And Julian Bean.
For.
Okay, that one's unanimous.
Thank you very much. So that concludes the applications. We have some next page appeals and appeal decisions to note. Item 8. I don't think we debate these generally because they're there for noting. So we have to note those very much. In which case that concludes the meeting. Next meeting is Tuesday, the 9th of December. And with that, I'm going to close the meeting, but ask members please to stay behind just for a couple of minutes. I realise it's already 4:20. Just a couple of small things we need to visit once we're one on one. Yeah.